Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Portsmouth City Council scheduled for today, Tuesday, September 8th, 2011, here from the Eileen Dondero Foley City Council chambers. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I appreciate your patience while we were in a non-meeting. As we call the meeting to order, I would like to ask the city clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Farini.
Here.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Claiborne.
Here.
Councilor Lister.
Here.
Councilor Hetmont. Here. Councilor Spear.
Here.
Councilor Dwyer.
Here.
Councilor Coviello.
Here.
Councilor Kennedy.
Here.
Councilor Smith.
Here. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask Assistant Mayor to lead us in a moment of silence for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next item on the agenda is acceptance of the minutes of August 16, 2011. Does anyone care to make a motion? We have a motion to accept?
Second.
Second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, it is unanimous. Next item on the agenda is the public comment session. We have no speakers who have signed up for the public comment session, so we will not proceed with that at this time. And we move on to approval of grants and donations. First being, and only, being approval of additional energy grant funds for the Discover Portsmouth Center in the amount of $23,100 from the TRC Environmental Corporation for energy upgrades to the former library building at 10 to 30 Middle Street.
Move to authorize city manager to accept and extend.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. It's unanimous. Councilor Dwyer.
Yes, Mayor, if it's appropriate, I'd like to move up the item that is under my name, letter D, under the reports and communications.
Okay, so we have a motion to suspend the rules?
Second.
All right, the motion has been made by Councilor Dwyer, and it has been seconded, so all in favor of a motion to suspend?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. It passes unanimously. Chair votes aye. So we now go forward with Councilor Dwyer, the substantive item.
And in the packet, under the city officials, is the memo that I prepared about this. A couple of things kind of coming together to make this, I think, appropriate at this time. A number of years ago, monies were put in the Public Art Trust as a gift to the city for the use of public art, potentially to build on, to encourage others to include money for public art. That money hasn't been used, and a few years ago we also talked as a council about doing something to recognize the contributions of Mayor Sorrell to the city, because, as you know, we have named things after others or made other recognitions, but we haven't recognized a mayor who, really did an incredible amount for the city and whose interests cross over so many different items. And it seemed to me, with the 10th anniversary looming of 9/11, Mayor Sorrell was mayor during 9/11, knowing that this art piece was becoming available and that the money was private money was available in the Public Art Trust to be expended on art. I did talk with the Art Speak folks who ran it through their committee. James, who is no longer on Art Speak but is chairing the public art group for the city, to see if this would be an appropriate thing to both to be able to acquire a piece of art for the city that would be in recognition of Mayor Sorrell. And for me, this has particularly come to the fore because I've been so involved with so many of the discussions around naming ball fields or naming items for people who've played softball for a long time, people who've done things for various recreation fields, and I think all that's very important, and I think we'll be doing that. But it seemed that we've been remiss in not also acknowledging Mayor Sorrell in some way, particularly after we named these chambers after Mayor Foley, who had also served the city for many years. So I thought it was a good opportunity to bring these couple of things together. The project seemed just particularly relevant to her interests. The artist who is here, the piece over there, collected buttons, many antique buttons from people all over the country, including many people in the area, to each one to represent somebody who died on 9/11. So I think the piece is sort of a bringing together of many different elements of Mayor Sorrell's interests, the youth and the older people who helped to contribute to this, the fact of artwork, because she was so important to our city in that, and her leadership, her strength and leadership during that difficult time. So I wanted to put forth the motion to authorize the trustees of the trust to expend those dollars from the Public Art Trust to be able to acquire this artwork, which has been at Ground Zero and has been displayed in that area as well, as a fitting time to do it with a fitting piece of artwork. And to also underline, as the city manager had reminded me, that this isn't using public funds in any way, but they are funds that the trustees now have.
Thank you, Councilor Dwyer. Your motion is on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Further discussion. Councilor Coviello.
A question, and I don't mean to keep the question vague, but I'm just trying not to be unseemly in my asking it. From what I understand, there was a rather very large and significant donation given to this, specifically in hopes of this project, this particular pattern. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Bob, if you care to speak?
That's correct.
Okay. That's my question.
Thank you, Councilor Coviello. Councilor Kennedy.
I only had one question from the art world today when they found out this, and one of the things, the question, and I think I would encourage the trust in the future to really look at is, they asked if there was a bidding process to this, or if there was an RFP for artwork for the trust to look on, and where does the local artist, the Portsmouth artist, fit in? And I really think we need to start thinking about the Portsmouth artist. They happen to be do quite big art, and it was concerning that this was coming up, and it looked like in the paper it was $15,000 that the council was going to spend on art, and it was concerning to them that they felt there was no RFP. Now that I found out more information, there really wasn't an RFP out there, and it was no need for an RFP. But I think I encourage the Art Council to really look at some of the Portsmouth artists. I think with the most recent event of the art on the side of buildings, which was California artists, was not local artists, and now they're feeling a little bit like they're being left out. So now that I've learned more history about it, I can understand where it's not being paid with taxpayers' money. I can learn to accept it, and it was going to be given in Mayor Sorrell's. But I would encourage this future to look at the Portsmouth artists. You know, we all know that they are having just as much difficulties in these economic times as other artists, but they are the people of Portsmouth.
Thank you, Councilor Kennedy. Further discussion. Councilor Dwyer.
Councilor Kennedy raises an interesting point, and that was in the early days of ArtSpeak, a lot of discussion among artists of should we limit public art to artists from Portsmouth. And you know, we had a lot of focus groups, we talked to a lot of people, and the unanimous feeling there was that there is a difference between artists of the seacoast and the state, and that nobody wanted to limit things just to Portsmouth artists, but definitely wanted to think about preferences for artists of the seacoast, which this is, obviously. And I think that's an interesting distinction and applies to a lot of different things that we do. But that was an active discussion in the early days of Art Speak, and I believe that is memorialized in the public art sort of rules that of looking broadly and not limiting it only to people who live in Portsmouth.
Thank you, Councilor Dwyer. Councilor Lister.
Could we just make sure that that discussion goes back to Art Speak, so in the future that maybe that's addressed? Because I think that's a good point that Councilor Kennedy brings up.
Thank you, Councilor Lister. Assistant Mayor.
I would like to support the motion, and I just, want to make it clear to everyone that it is private donations. This isn't public funds that we're spending for this. It's private donations that have been funneled through the trustees of the trust fund, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Because, in this tough economic time, it would be hard for me to approve a $15,000 purchase of artwork because of what, our whole country's going through right now. The other comment I have is I think it's wonderful that we're thinking of Mayor Sorrell in this effort, but I would like to see us think of other things we could do to memorialize her. I think this could be one of several. I would like to have input from people about what they think we could do to memorialize Mayor Sorrell. So I think that's a great idea, but I think we need to think about, maybe other things we could do to think of her as a former mayor.
Thank you, Assistant Mayor. Briefly pass the gavel.
Mayor Farini.
I intend to support this as well. I think it's a fitting project and a fitting tribute for a mayor who served the city long and well, so I intend to support it. Councilor Smith.
Just one question. Do we have a display area?
Well, Your Honor, if I might.
Please.
It was my thought, and I talked to the artist and others, and I thought for a few months we'd display it here. This is an area that we've displayed artwork before, and then we'll make a determination, the City Council can make a determination later where we want to permanently house it. But I thought because of the size of the piece, and because of the room that we have, and because of the 9/11 10th anniversary, it would be nice for people to be able to see this here in City Hall, where Mayor Sorrell spent a lot of her time, especially in that very difficult time. So right now, we have it here, and then into the future, we'll be taking input and deciding where it should go.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No one votes opposed. Passed unanimously. Thank you, Councilor Dwyer, and thank you very much for coming, and congratulations. We now move on to the consent agenda.
Your Honor?
I'm sorry, City Manager.
I just wanted to bring to the City Council's attention on the consent agenda at the recommendation of the City Council, and as we discussed, there's new items under the consent agenda. You'll notice that the licenses are under the consent agenda for the projecting signs as well as the poll licenses. So that was at the suggestion of council members to do these under consent. As you are aware, under the consent, any council member can ask that any item be taken off the consent. So that was to expedite these, which were or are appearing to be more perfunctory in nature.
Thank you, John. And it came as a result, I think, of discussion about poll licenses and where they were. So appreciate that. But that said, it's a little bit longer consent agenda. So if anyone has anything they'd like to pull, please make yourself known to me now. If not, I'm going to go forward with a reading of the consent agenda, and we will proceed. And if somebody thinks of something in the middle, please do not hesitate to interrupt me, and we'll take it out for you. The first is a letter from Barbara Masser, Executive Director, Pro Portsmouth, requesting permission to hold First Night Portsmouth 2012 on Saturday, December 31st, 2011. Item B is a request for a license from Joanne Wyron, owner of Art with a Splash, for property located at 222 State Street, to install a projecting sign. The next are, and there are stipulations with respect to the planning director there in your packet. Item C is a request for a license from Sarasa Sur, owner of Salanista, for property located at 90 Fleet Street, to install a projecting sign. Item D is a request for a license from Kerry LaJoy, owner of Hazel Boutique, for property located at 7 Commercial Alley, to install a projecting sign. Item E is a request for approval of pole license, underground conduit system for Comcast at 161 Deer Street. Item F is request for approval of pole licenses, underground conduit system for the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, corner of Sapphire Street and Rockingham Avenue onto the right-of-way for Interstate 95. Item G is a request for approval of pole licenses, installation of one pole located on Cutts Ave for PSNH. Item H is request for approval of pole license, installation of one pole located on McKinley Road for PSNH. And item I is acceptance of donation to the fire department from Mary E. Gollum, the amount of $100. That concludes the reading of the consent.
Move to accept the
Agenda.
consent agenda?
We have a motion to accept. We have a second discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, it's unanimous. We move on to item 9, presentation and consideration of written communications and petitions. The first being a letter from Ellen Stockmeyer, the Pan, Massachusetts Challenge, requesting permission to hold the 6th annual PMC Newcastle Seacoast Kids Ride on Sunday, September 25th, 2011. Do we have a motion? We have a motion to the city manager with power, presumably?
Yes.
Yep. And do we have a second? We have a second. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed, it's unanimous. Next is a letter from Sarasa Sur, Salonista, requesting permission to hold a fashion show in Market Square on the Pleasant Street side of the North Church on Wednesday, September 14, 2011, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., with a rain date of September 15, 2011.
Your Honor,
City
if I
manager.
might, this individual came to my office and asked about this. She originally wanted to have a event in front of the North Church, and as the City Council will recall, that they established a council policy in 2009 regarding public gatherings in Market Square, because in front of the North Church, we don't allow for amplification, plus it would be an obstruction to the sidewalk. I did suggest to her that she might want to consider Vaughan Mall, and I said, but in any event, she had every right to ask the City Council for this in accordance with the policy for public gathering space. She did ask for the spots, as we described, from Pleasant from Porter to the Square, and this would be to close, as we did with Summer in the Streets, that area, and she would be conducting a fashion show from 6 to 8 p.m. Again, this is our public gathering space, and this would require the City Council to authorize the closure of that street as we have outlined in the policy. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It's a Wednesday night, and we would do what we typically do. We would reverse the flow of traffic on Porter, and we have that pretty well down. I know the Public Works Department would set up barricades. Typically, we don't need police control there. So I just wanted to bring this, and I attach a copy of the policy for the City Council's information. So you could refer this to me with power in accordance with the policy, or you could refer that she have this in the Vaughan Mall, or you could deny it.
Does anyone care? Council Covey, I'll put a motion on the floor.
I recommend we authorize the city manager to approve the location at the Vaughan Mall.
Second.
Do we have a second? Discussion. Council Spear.
I'm going to support the motion. I also think it's the event is for next week, right? So, I mean, I think let's see how it goes to the Vaughan Mall, and maybe next year it could be with more foresight. It could be at this location.
And one of the things I just want to mention is when somebody comes into the office, I really don't try to persuade them either way. It's really the City Council's determination. So if they submit a letter, it goes on the agenda.
Further discussion. Assistant Mayor.
City Manager Bohinko, do you think, is it safer to have something like this at Vaughan Mall? Do you have an opinion about that, or?
Well, I mean, I
I'm
would
putting you on
defer
the
the fashion
spot.
show to you, but I guess the point is that it might be useful to, because there is a stage at Vaughan Mall, there is the ability to, I don't know to what, as Councilor Spear said, this came in just at the last minute. Typically, I would meet with people well in advance on these things. So the Vaughan Mall, she'd have to make it work. We'd work with her to make sure that it fits within the Vaughan Mall. If she doesn't want to do it, fine. I would just then say to her, if you're interested in doing something like this, you need to do it within 60 days or at least 90 days to get some, better feedback relative to it.
Having heard discussion and explanation, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, passes unanimously. Item C is a letter from Leanne Stella and Shana Argyros, Arts in Reach, requesting permission to hold a fundraising walk on Saturday, October 22nd, 2011, from 9 a.m. to 11 o'clock. Does anyone care to make a motion?
So
For the
moved.
city manager with power.
Thank you. We have it
Second.
moved and seconded, and thank you, Councilor Kennedy, Assistant Mayor. That is before us. Any discussion or inquiry? Councilor Lister.
Do we have any information about fundraising for what the proceeds might go for?
I do not, but I can ask if you'd like.
It's Art and Reach.
It's
Art and Reach.
for teenage girls.
Yeah,
Teenage Girls Art Program.
Is that,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, it's unanimous. Chair votes aye. Item D, letter from Doug Bates, Greater Portsmouth Chamber of Commerce, requesting permission to hold a farewell event for the Memorial Bridge on Saturday, October 1, from 2011, from 3 o'clock p.m. to 8 o'clock p.m., and further requested that Scott Avenue be closed for the event hours to create a flow between Harbor Place and Prescott Park surrounding the bridge.
Move to the city manager with power.
Second.
Thanks, Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Smith, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, none opposed, passes unanimously, and that concludes that portion of the agenda. We now move on to reports and communications from city officials, city manager, and items which require action from the city manager. John, item 1.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first item is one that I brought before you at your last meeting, and that deals with the proposed transfer of funds regarding retirement. I've attached a copy of the announcement for the New Hampshire retirement system regarding the employer contribution rates that were recertified pursuant to House Bill 2, effective August 1st, 2011 through June 30th, 2013. The additional cost over and above what has been budgeted for FY12 for each group is as follows. The police department would need another $117,700 for a total adjusted budget of $913,360. The fire department would need an additional $101,405 for a total adjusted appropriation of $923,424. And the school department would need an additional $302,584 for a total adjusted appropriation of $2.2 million, $2,202,842, for a total of $521,689 that would be transferred, for a total adjusted budget for those three departments of $4,039,626. Also, please note that this is in accordance with 7.16 of the city charter. The city council has the right to transfer money from one department to another. During its budget proceedings, the city council established a department that we refer to as the collective bargaining and pension contingency. The city council therefore has the right, by virtue of a vote, to make that transfer and to instruct me to make those transfers to the various departments in the amount that I just stated. In addition, Councilor Kennedy requested that we survey other cities to find out what they're doing, and the Human Resource Department did survey 12 cities and heard back from 6. Manchester will be using contingency funds. Somersworth will be using their fund balance. Dover will try to absorb the amount in their budget. Franklin, Laconia, and Concord have budgeted sufficient funds for FY12 to cover their costs. So therefore, I'd recommend making the transfers in accordance with Section 7.16 of the city charter, as I've described.
Do we have a motion in that regard?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, passed unanimously. Item 2.
Thank you, Your Honor. The next item deals with the report back regarding a request from Worth Development Condominium Association for the expansion of a dumpster area in the Worth lot. Attached is a copy of a letter and report back from the Parking Committee to the City Council. The Worth Development Condominium Association requested the expansion of its dumpster space in the Worth lot to accommodate 4 restaurants and 12 office retail tenants. There's currently 4 feet of open space between the right fence of the dumpster area and the adjacent parking space. Moving the fence 3 feet would provide the necessary dumpster space and provide enough space for car doors opening in the parking space. And I've attached a copy of a photograph which you can take a look at. So the Worth Development Condominium Association will pay to move the bollards and the fencing in order to expand the area to the right. And I would recommend that the City Council move to accept the recommendation of the Parking Committee and approve the Worth Development Condominium Association's request to move the fence 3 feet to the right, as shown in the attached photograph, at their expense.
So we have a motion in accordance with the request from the city manager.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Councilors, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, that's unanimous.
Thank you, Your Honor. The next item deals report back regarding iPark. If you recall, Councilor Spear requested us, the city staff to evaluate the city absorbing customer service fees for purchasing parking credits on iPark devices. And the following information is being provided to the City Council. The city pays a fee for every parking credit purchase on the following schedule: 10% for $25 purchases, 7% for $50 purchases, and 5% for $100 purchases. The customer also pays a service fee based on the same schedule. The city paid $2,751 in credit card and service fees on the $22,700 in parking credits purchased by our customers in fiscal year 11. We currently have 485 iPark users. In FY11, the city would have to pay an additional $1,654 to subsidize the iPark customer service fee, bringing the total fees to the city of $4,405. If we were, the fee schedule is set up to incentivize the larger purchases. If we absorb the fees for the customer, thereby removing the incentive for larger purchases, we could expect our fees to be an additional $600 to $700 higher, or $5,000 per year, due to smaller incremental purchases. What's really being recommended is the absorbing the fee for purchases over $100, that anything higher in purchases in place and would actually waive the fee. So the 5% fee would be waived for anybody that would have the $100 purchases in excess of that. And that would cost us about $370 annually. So we would recommend through the Parking Committee that you approve the elimination of the iPark customer service fee for parking credits purchases of $100.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Council Coviello.
Perhaps this is a question for the parking manager, John Fredericks. How many people presently, what percentage of purchases are for $100?
John, would you like to come down, please?
Can't be that many, do you think? That's a lot of parking. Do you have one?
Welcome, John Frederick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. In FY11, 284 purchases were made with the $25 increment, 164 at the $50 increment, and 74 at the $100 increment.
The purpose, I guess, and I would let Councilor Spear speak to this, but the idea was to try to incentivize people to do the higher purchases.
To go to the higher
That's
ones.
correct. And
Council Spear.
yeah, that's correct. And I want to, it was along the same lines of thinking how we encourage people to use credit cards at the meters. We absorb the fee. And I want to thank the Parking Committee and the staff for working on this.
Thank you, Councilor Spear. Thank you, John. Any further questions at this time before John retires for the, Tony? Councilor Coviello, my apologies.
Yes, no offense. I think the $100 purchases is, I mean, I understand you want to incentivize, but I'm amazed we have 74 people purchasing at that level. That seems like a high burden, and I don't know, I guess I wish it was $50, and I'm asking if there are people would be interested in lowering it to 50.
Whatever you, I mean, it just is a matter of, that's fine. That's why it's here before you.
Okay. Well, we have a motion to accept this recommendation. Now, that does not mean that there are not potentially future recommendations to occur, but is there study involved, John?
Well, Your Honor, you know, what we might want to do is, let's see in 6 months how, if this program incentivizes people, and if it doesn't, then maybe we come back and we report back to you in 6
That's
months.
fine.
Okay?
Thank you, John. Council Coviello. Any further discussion on this one? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, it's unanimous. Item 4.
The next item is the proposed purchase of the La Cava property at 95 Mechanic Street. And what I'd like to do is turn this matter over to the city attorney. And while he's getting ready to speak on this, this is really a letter that has been sent to us by an attorney, Chubrich, who represents the owner of the property. And we felt it important that it come before the city council to start the initial discussion.
Attorney.
First off, as a result of some telephone calls that come into the City Hall, we've made copies of a certain lease that was entered into in 1947. The calls came in after the agenda was put together, so the lease couldn't have been provided with the agenda packet. But as the councilors know, there's a sewer pump station on Mechanic Street. It is a sewer pump station which has created some issues for residents of the south end in the past, and it is a crucial sewer pump station for any redesign of the city's sewer system. With that background, when we were recently contacted by Attorney Chubich on behalf of the LaCava family, who own the parcel of land adjacent to the pump station, asking whether the city would have any interest in acquiring the LaCava property, we thought it would be a good idea to bring it to the city council, because acquiring the LaCava property would create a situation whereby the pump station could be improved or perhaps moved somewhat. That's the request that's come to you this evening. At this point, we're only at the stage of wishing to proceed with investigating whether this is an acquisition that would be desirable for the city. There's been no discussion of the price that might be paid for the LaCava property. There's been no discussion of the terms and conditions that might attach to that acquisition. All we're seeking from the City Council now is the authority to begin to investigate, so that if the acquisition of the property becomes appropriate at some point in the future, a proposal would be brought to the City Council to make that acquisition.
In addition, Your Honor, we are asking, because of the requirement that the planning board would have to review this in any manner, that it be sent to the planning board, and a lot of these things could be fleshed out during the planning board's review, which is required for any purchase or sale of property for the city. Bob, you might want to talk about the issue of, we're actually looking at the land that is owned by LaCava, not the so-called lease.
For a long time, well, for 29 years, I've personally known about the very complicated title situation down there, which includes property which the city formerly owned as a so-called city pier. My presumption has always been that that predates the Memorial Bridge, and that boats would go back and forth. That property is where the pump station is now located. Moving upriver from that property, the city owns a piece of land which amounts to the extension of Gate Street, if Gate Street were to run to the water. It's a paper street of Gate Street, and the city owns that too. That's a second parcel of land. There's property on which the white, if you're familiar with the Mechanic Street, there's a white apartment building. That's the LaCava property, and that's what the city's looking at. Now, there is also a lease represented by the document that's been handed out tonight, entered into in 1947. The story which has been presented to me was that a son of the LaCava family was killed in World War II, and the city council at the time, in recognition of that, entered into this 99-year lease which allows the LaCava family to use certain city property down there. It is very poorly described, but it appears to be the mud flats at the end of what was Gate Street, and that's the lease that's been given to you. The existence of that parcel also complicates this situation. Now, it is exactly for these reasons, this complicated boundary and title situation, that's appropriate to refer this matter to the planning board. Of all the city boards and commissions and agencies, it is really the planning board that is best equipped to sort this matter out and determine what, if anything, the city might want to do down there.
Thank you, Attorney Sullivan, for that description. So you understand in some more depth the request for action. So the requested action is a referral to the planning board for a report back to the city. Does anyone care to move? Okay, thanks, Councilor Smith. Anyone else care to second it?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion. Councilor Smith.
If I may, I just also find this document interesting. When you see that it was signed by Mary Dondero and witnessed by Justice of Peace Eileen Dondero. How many documents have two mayors' signatures on it?
Oh, that's cool.
And Your Honor, if I might, I just want
John.
to thank Councilor Kennedy for bringing this to my attention, that there were concerns out there. And so we knew about this. We should have probably, it was very difficult to try to describe it in the memorandum. Yeah. But again, I want to thank her for bringing that to our attention, and we have provided you with that document.
Great. Councilor Kennedy.
Was there a second to your motion?
There was.
Yes, I did.
I want to thank City Manager Bohanko for looking at this. It is of great concern in many of our fellow legends of time, shall we say, that that this be worked out in an appropriate way, and that there was some concern when they saw the agenda that there was nothing on it about the agreement. So I'll be supporting going to the planning board. Also, I'd encourage the planning board to look at the agreement, and maybe they can try to help figure this all out and look at what land is really owned by the city and what land is really owned by the LaCavas, which I think is a big question here. Who owns what, and maybe we can figure that out.
Thank you, Council Kennedy. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, it's unanimous. Item 5.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next item deals with the report back regarding 99 Bow Street, Martingale Wharf encroachments. As you recall, at the July 18th City Council meeting, the council referred the attached letter from Martingale Wharf Limited Partnership regarding Martingale Wharf encroachments at 99 Bow Street to the Planning Board for report back to the City Council. I've attached a copy of a memorandum from Rick Tainter, Planning Director, regarding this matter. The Planning Board at its August 18, 2011 meeting voted unanimously to recommend to the City Council to grant the requested easements.
Well, there before you have the requested action accepting the recommendations of the Planning Board is presented back to us. Do we have that motion? We do. And do we have a second?
Second.
And discussion, Council Coviello.
I'll be recusing myself from this item and the next item.
Thank you, Council Coviello. Remind me on the next item, just so that we make sure that we have a clear record in that regard. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Councilor
I guess
Kennedy.
I read this, and my question is how did we get to this point on these easements? How come it wasn't picked up? How come it wasn't dealt with appropriately during the process? We know that people are having mixed feelings about this property because of the Martingale and how it was taken down quite quickly. And how do we get to the point where we miss this? And I guess I need an explanation so that I can explain to people why this is happening. This has been kind of question in some people's area. I mean, there was a continuing there. It was traffic jams there. And how did we get to this point?
Well, let me respond by asking the Deputy City Manager to come down to explain the process that took place and some of the issues that surrounded this, since she was involved with the Planning Board on it. So I think it's probably the best way to move forward.
Thank you. Welcome, Cindy Hayden.
Thank you. Council Kennedy, this went before the Planning Board as a site plan, HDC, et cetera, and a lot of these things are picked up along the way, although I'll tell you that there are a lot of projections over city sidewalks that have been out there for a number of years that don't have licenses from the city. For example, of the two things that are before you on these easements, one is the bay window that was there for a very, very long time in the old Martingale, this with no license. So this is just a recreation of that bay window. The second one, which is the drainage system from the roof drains, that was a decision made in the field, not shown on the original site plan. So when we got the as-built plans, the planning department compared them and noticed that that was not part of their original approval. So we pick up a lot of these along the way. The more obvious ones, like foundations that are under city sidewalks, or obviously people connecting into storm drains, if they're shown on the site plan. But there are so many details with these projects, we don't always catch them all. It would be great if we did.
Any further inquiry?
No, I just felt there needed to be an explanation given the situations that have been happening up there and the length of the project.
Thank you, Councilor Kennedy. Thank you, Deputy City
Cindy,
Manager.
don't go anywhere. You're going to be taking care of the next one.
Okay. Welcome back. All right. Any further discussion? Motion's before us. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? Oh, one abstention. Councilor Coviello.
Your Honor, I'd like to have the Deputy City Manager walk through the report back regarding the request for rezoning of land on Bartlett Street, Kate Street, Assessor's Map 165, Lot 1, 30 Kate Street.
Okay. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. This is a rezoning request for 2.38 acre parcel. This had gone to the Board of Adjustment, zoned industrial, and they were seeking 6 variances, including dimensional relief, use variance, so that they could have workforce housing and some live workspaces a number of years ago. That was not successful at the Board of Adjustment. This is a completely different request. And when we have a rezoning request, we look at the surrounding zones. This is abutted by, for example, office research. That's not a zone that we're adding parcels to. We're looking at taking parcels out of that zone. So we looked at what would make sense. They had wanted MRB, but there's no MRB zones abutting this, so it would have been an island spot zoning. So we looked at business zone, and that seemed to make most sense for that neighborhood. They can have a combination of residential and non-residential, 1/3 of the development. And it's not as an intense use as it would have been under their Board of Adjustment request that was a number of years ago that was not successful. You probably recall that within the last 6 months or so, there was a rezoning request for a larger area that went all the way out to the Route 1 area, and that was withdrawn at the last minute. That was a rezoning request by Jask Realty, and that was to rezone for general business. So this is the most appropriate zone for that area. They have interest in this rezoning to business, even though it wasn't their original request for the mixed residential business.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Council Kennedy.
What does this do for all the other industrial zones out there?
Nothing. They would not change. It would just be this parcel that basically you're moving the zone boundary to include this parcel in the business zone. And that's an area that, you know, as time and staffing allows, we really want to look at the zoning of that whole area, but it's not part of this effort right now.
Thank you. So we're going to need a motion on the floor to accept the planning board's recommendation, if indeed that is the intent of the council, and we'll find out. It's moved and seconded. Further discussion.
I just have a question.
Assistant Mayor.
Do we have an idea of what plans there are for that particular parcel, if it's changed to business?
Well, I think they want to do a combination of residential and non-residential, and that's the extent of our knowledge. The non-residential could be office, it could be retail.
Okay, thank you.
So the recommendation would be to move to accept the planning board's recommendation as presented and bring back for first reading a zoning amendment to reflect this proposed change at the September 19, 2011 City Council meeting.
John, thank you for that clarification. That's the motion before us, acceptable to the mover and the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, it's unanimous, and an abstention from Council Coviello.
The next item I'll ask the Deputy City Manager to go through as well. It's a request, it's a report back regarding the acquisition of city-owned land on Constitution Avenue.
And this was another item referred to the Planning Board by the City Council. The Planning Board voted at their last meeting to unanimously recommend that this land, which is as you can see from the photos that are attached in your packet, is pretty ledgy. And apparently was just this leftover land between the construction of Constitution and the actual parcel boundary. And the applicant wants to add it to their property so that they can develop their property, and have offered to purchase that land to add it to their property.
And Your Honor, on this, I'd recommend the City Council accept the Planning Board's recommendation to approve the sale of the requested parcel in such terms as it deems acceptable, and further authorize the City Manager to negotiate the sale of the parcel with the final approval of the purchase price to be made by the City Council, because we still need to go through our due diligence on this, and quite frankly, we weren't going to do that until we had some kind of direction from the Council. So if the Council wants to sell this, then the next step would be to work with an appraiser and come up with a number that is acceptable to both sides. And before we enter into any agreement, I would bring this back to the City Council for their approval.
Having heard,
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Smith moved and seconded the request for action by the by the City Manager, as well as his explanation as to the intent of how he would proceed. Do we have any further discussion given that? Councilor Smith.
Thank you. If I may, the I see where the land that you're looking at selling, it shows on the maps like two other sections on either side. Is that city property as well? And if so, have we gone to the owners of the adjoining properties on that one to see if they want to purchase it?
I mean, you're talking about as the dotted line going into the solid line, moving over to those parcels?
Yes. It looks like there's a little triangle.
It does look like it is owned by the city. We never did approach them, but I'm sure they would approach us if they had interests.
And we were provided with a lot of background documentation. They did a lot of research on that land, this particular parcel or this particular area that they would like to add to their parcel. The abutting parcels, they haven't done that level of research, so I can't say for sure in looking at this map whether that land actually exists, quote unquote. But if it was the council's desire, we could let them become aware that their neighbor is interested in buying land.
I think if you could let them be aware, maybe they'd like to add on to their property as well.
Sure, we can follow up on that.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed?
Thank you, Your Honor. The next item deals with a request by the New Hampshire Department of Transportation to use the water tower licensed by the Peace Development Authority to the city, located off International Drive at Oaks Avenue on the trade port. NHDOT proposes to deploy an advanced traffic management system on the southern quarter of Route I-95. The wireless communication network will involve 3 antennas on the railing of the water tank and support the structure on the land near the tank. And I've attached a copy of a diagram showing the tank with the proposed changes. In order to proceed with the project, NHDOT requires a license from the city to allow the antennas to be attached to the water tank. The PDA will also be involved as owner of the property. Although the license agreement is not in final form, its salient features will be that NHDOT pays the city $250 a month, and all design, construction, and maintenance risks associated with the antennas and will be responsibility of the NHDOT. New Hampshire Department of Transportation desires that the license be for a term of 5 years with 3 automatic 5-year renewals. In order to maintain compliance with the New Hampshire DOT's project schedule, the agency is requesting that at this meeting, the City Council provide the city manager with authority to negotiate and execute an agreement with NHDOT to allow use of the International Drive water storage tank by that department and adjoining property for the purpose of installing the telecommunication equipment for the purpose of creating and operating an advanced traffic management system kept on the southern quarter of Route I-95.
So moved.
Second.
Having heard the action, it being moved and seconded by Councilors Coviello and Smith respectively, we can go forward with further discussion. Councilor Coviello.
Question about the potential use of this for, I know a lot of times like telecommunication companies, cell phone towers and stuff, they want to rent this space. So my question is kind of twofold. Do we know that we're getting an appropriate fee for that? And are we changing ourselves because some other company might want to have taken that space?
Right. Let me have Dave Allen come down and speak to the issue. But the other thing I just want to say that our other water towers, we are utilizing the space for telecommunications, and we are getting receiving monthly fees. We have a standard contract that we've been using, and we go forward with those. But in the case, it's a little, it's not as typical with because we have involved the PDA, a state agency, and a state agency wanted to use. It's a little different than with the telecommunication companies, but I'll defer to
Thank you, John. As John had mentioned, we have a consultant who deals with the leasing of all of our towers. So we have a consistent approach to dealing with cell systems on any of our structures. And in this particular case, as John had mentioned, we were dealing with DOT. This is specifically for their signboards that are going to be out on the highway. So it's no one else is using it. It's strictly really another governmental agency that we're dealing with here.
But are we limited in the amount of availability for other devices on that object?
No, the discussions about what this agreement say will make two things clear. It's not exclusive to NHDOT. We can still use the tower for other purposes, and their equipment will not be allowed to interfere with any other telecommunication equipment that goes on the tower.
most specifically ours, because that's where our SCADA system for our controls are there, so.
Councilor Kennedy.
When it says support structures, which I'm assuming are on the ground, I could be wrong on that. It's not. I'm not clear on the diagram that was given to us what support structures and what they might look like.
Right. We're not entirely clear yet either, except that it's going to be a small box-like structure to house.
Right, my understanding, it was like an electrical box, like you'd have a small control box for a electrical station, just not even a man-sized station.
I guess I would want clarification on that, so we didn't have a huge thing out there before. I understand the antennas on the existing water tower, but I guess I would be kind of curious about the support structure and what that means. And
typically it probably will be the size. It won't be that big, but we can certainly we'll be working with the PDA, and they certainly won't want anything large there. But
it says it on the plans. It says a 4x4 concrete pad with a 30-inch square equipment cabinet at the base, and then they have 4-foot diameter dish antennas mounted to the side of the tank.
Again, I think that's probably what they intend to do, and we'll just clarify that. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Calviello. Councilor Kennedy, Assistant Mayor.
Did the PDA have to approve this also?
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Thank you. Just more curiosity's sake, I guess, what is it the antennas are doing? It doesn't look like it's cameras monitoring traffic.
No, it's their communication, so that they have signboards, automated signboards that they're going to have out on the spalding. So this is how they get that signal to the signboard.
So when they change the message.
Right.
So any concerns about speeding can be deferred at this time.
maybe they can give a little money to our fire station as kind of an offset.
There you go. Okay, Councilor, Assistant Mayor.
Why does it say a term of 5 years with 3 automatic 5-year renewal periods? Why don't they just say a term of 20 years?
In case they don't want to be out there for 20 years.
Oh. Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, it's unanimous.
The next item, Your Honor, I'd like to have John Frederick come down and talk about the report back on the on-street parking at 233 Vaughan Street. Also, I think it's integral to his discussion if you just kind of refer to the diagram of the map for the street so that you can follow along with the parking and the no parking on that particular street.
Welcome again, John.
Mr. Mayor. The Technical Advisory Committee referred the project at 233 Vaughan Street to the Parking Committee to review the proposal and the recommendation from that committee that there be on-street metered parking on Vaughan Street in vicinity of the retail business that's proposed for that property. With that, there would be 10 metered spaces in addition to a space reserved for the walking disabled, with the addition of the sidewalk and the northward push, if you will, of the parking onto Vaughan Street. In order to accommodate that, we would have to look at doing no parking on the northerly side of Vaughan Street across from this project, just within the boundaries of the parking lane that's proposed.
Thank you for that offering. We're going to need a motion to get this on the floor. Councilor Dwyer?
I'll put forth that motion, then I'll have a question.
Sure.
Second.
Okay, the motion to accept the Parking Committee's recommendations has been put forward. It's been seconded. Councilor Dwyer.
John, would you just explain why, the reason then with reference to this, that we need to get rid of I understand why there might be no parking in part of that area, but why is there no parking on the entire red area?
With the sidewalk, the addition of the sidewalk, currently on Vaughan Street, vehicles park in the area where the sidewalk is going to be built.
Will be, okay.
And that's going to push that out. And
I see.
Each parking lane requires 8.5 feet of width, and a travel lane ideally would be 11 feet per lane. Therefore, the street doesn't have enough width to accommodate parking on both sides and have safe travel lanes.
Councilor Kennedy, then Councilor Calviello.
I've had a couple people call with concerns because they live over in these neighborhoods because of parking issues over there, and a lot of people, first of all, the question is meter parking. You know, right now they're parking without for free, and it's neighborhoods because those people know about it. And so I was looking at it this on Monday night, and I was thinking, how could we do this? Is there any way that could become one way, and then you can keep parking on both sides of the street? Because I really think we need to keep it unmetered for those residents who have no parking over in these areas. And you know, I'm really questioning our zoning laws for having these companies not provide parking on their own property for their needs. I'm really having a hard time with that right now in this area because I don't want to scooch out the residents for their lack of parking. So I guess my request would be is to look at it and go back and see if it can become one way and leave the parking there.
So that we understand where we are procedurally, and then we'll go to Council Coviello. The motion is pending to accept the recommendation. Council Kennedy has spoken against it at this.
I guess I would like to change the motion to have Mr. Frederick go back and see if we can look at it as a one-way street.
Well, I think maybe to clarify that motion, because I think what would have to happen.
You have to table it.
I think what you would want to do is have the maker of the motion withdraw, and then you would ask that it be reviewed by traffic and safety, because I think you'd want to have traffic and safety look at the viability of a one-way street there. I don't know anything about that street. I don't know if we really want to get into that conversation right now, because I think you'd want to include the police department, the fire department, all those that would be interested in a one-way street, because that's a major change. So I guess, and I would defer to Councilor Smith relative as chair of the traffic and safety if he thought that was an appropriate place to put this. But that certainly would be the place that you'd want it to go, I would think, with a report back to the city council. I don't know how this would affect the approvals and how that might affect the development of the site. So I would have to probably ask that question as well. I don't know if Cindy, you have an answer to that at all? No. So I guess the mayor does make a good point. We could table this and then refer it over to traffic and safety, but that's where it would have to go, because if you're going to do one way, you're going to have to bring in all those agencies, plus you're going to have to bring in the developer, and you're going to have to.
Let's do that before you speak, and please do. Well, Ken, Councilor Smith, why don't you go ahead, and then we'll see if we had to do something procedural.
I was just going to say that's fine if the council wants to send it over to traffic and safety. We're happy to take a look at it. Just for more information on it, the reason why, because I for one don't want to lose any free parking in that area. But one of the reasons why we're looking at it is because of the development of that piece of property in the back. There's a large building going in there. It's going to have retail space available to it. They are providing one. They have their own parking lot for the residents and offices that are going to be on there. But these spaces would be for the retail stores, whatever they may be, that are going to be going in there. And the parking committee looked at it as we would retail anywhere else in the city, in the downtown, to have metered spaces for the turning over of spaces for those retail storefronts. We did not want to take away any more free parking, and we limited as best we could the no parking area only to the area where we would be where the road would be narrowing up because of the new parking lot that's going to be going in there. The new sidewalk that's going to be going in there. One thing to remember on Vaughn Street, where it comes around, you also have Green Street that comes in the back. That's coming down the back side of that, and you have traffic that literally flows both ways around there. And there is other free parking that is still up just beyond the old Portsmouth Herald building. On street there is still free. The opposite side of the street along the cemetery, all of that is still free, and the rest of it coming around Vaughn Street is also still free.
Thank you, Councilor Smith, for that clarification. Under the circumstances, I'll just ask, Councilor Dwyer, you were the maker of the motion. Given what has transpired, do you have an interest in withdrawing your motion? And if it's acceptable to the second, we could then proceed with the referral as suggested, or how do we feel?
Yes, I'm fine with that, because it sounds like the one-way has not been discussed at
Right.
TAC or parking and safety.
Okay, so Councilor Dwyer offers to withdraw her motion. Who was the second?
I'll withdraw.
Okay, thank you. So it's withdrawn. Now we need a new motion.
Make the motion to refer this to traffic and safety to look at the possibility of making this area of Vaughan Street to be a one-way street.
Second.
Moved, seconded. Discussion, Councilor Coviello.
I wonder if I could tack on a couple more items to that, and that is, one being, can we explore not metering these spaces until the building is actually built? And the second one, sort of related to this loss of parking, is can we explore removing the meters on Maplewood Avenue, page south of where this, you can see where the spaces are starting to be outlined. I work in this building on the lower corner, and it's the only spaces that are empty on the street are the ones with the meters, because on the other side of the street it's free on the building side. On the cemetery side it's free, on the building side it's metered, and they're always empty because they're metered. And
If I may, that question actually came up before, and the reason we had decided to look at leaving them metered is because of the retail aspect of the bank that's in there.
Okay, that's fine. But
we're
my
happy
first
to
recommendation.
happy to look at it again if
Right, well,
the council so chooses.
Thanks. I mean, we don't have, I'm going to ask, John, if you've made note of that, or if city manager's made note of that. It's not part of the pending motion. It doesn't need to be if you're comfortable with that part
Yeah,
as
one
being
item,
part of
right.
the discussion. Yes, one item. So with that, we have a motion duly seconded, discussed, further discussion.
Further discussion,
Councilor
also to the other point of Councilor Corviello, the actual metering of those spaces was discussed and when they'd be going in. Remember, this building is going to be under construction. The sidewalk is usually one of the last things that's put in, and the meters wouldn't be going in until the sidewalk itself would be completed.
Scratch that one off?
Councilor Coviello.
That was the discussion we had at our parking committee. when
Thank you,
discussing
Councilor Smith. Councilor Coviello.
There exists now, I think, a problem with that. So I guess I asked traffic and safety to take a look at the current situation there, because we have signs saying no parallel parking, and there's parallel parking going on. Parallel parking only, and there's head-in parking. People are encroaching on the railroad property, and it creates a really difficult turning area there. So I thought this would be addressed more immediately, and I think it should be looked at prior to.
I think you're going to find it's going to be a lot of the construction vehicles are going to get there first, because this property, as far as I understand, goes under construction this fall, is when they want to break ground. And most likely, it's going to be construction trucks that are going to get in there before.
Well,
if you go out there early in the morning, it is empty.
Never mind. Sorry.
That being said, it's part of the conversation, probably something we should be mindful of without formal motion practice, if that's acceptable to all concerns for purposes of consideration.
And maybe the planning department, when they're doing their construction management, can be able to look into that.
There you go.
That'd be a good place for it in their document.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. Any further discussion on this issue? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Item 10.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next item deals with the request for a license agreement at 104 Congress Street. Peter Middleton, president of Martini Northern LLC, has contacted the Legal Department and Public Works Department to discuss and request a license to allow the use of a portion of the sidewalk on Congress Street and Chestnut Street adjacent to the Kearsarge Building at 104 Congress Street for scaffolding and related construction purposes. I've attached an aerial map of the area that's under discussion. The license would have special terms relative to live loading of construction debris, pedestrian passage, and special coordination with upcoming city events and music hall events. No parking impact is anticipated. The license would also contain the usual terms and conditions related to limitation of use, restoration of any damage, and insurance requirements. The license term would be for a period of 2 months with an option for the city manager to extend the license term for no more than 6 months at his discretion should there be an unavoidable construction or weather delay.
So moved.
Second.
Moved, seconded, discussion. Councilor Smith, and we'll move up this way.
Just assuming this will look like and be similar to what was up there pretty much last winter when they were doing work a couple of doors up.
Steve?
Director of Public Works, Steve Parkinson.
Yes, Councilor. It'll look similar in nature to the one that was up the street by Flatbread in that area. But in the case of this building on Congress Street, the sidewalk is much wider in front of this building, so it's not going to be right on the curb line. But it will be a staging system that is on that corner of the building so that they can facilitate removal and replacement of roof components.
And do they anticipate them being out of there before snow flies? And if not, let me just say, if part of the discussion can be that any snow they remove from the scaffolding, they also remove from the street.
That is correct. They end up having the responsibility for the area that is encompassed by their staging.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any further discussion on this item? This is the last of the city manager's items requesting action. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? It's unanimous. John, anything further or questions for
Yes,
John?
Your Honor. If you look at the informational items, there's an update regarding what you requested at the last meeting for Portsmouth. It's self-explanatory, and that it appears that as Barbara Massar is here tonight, if there are any questions, I'm sure she would, if you suspend the rules, she'd be more than happy to answer them. But it pretty much outlines what the situation is with them. The next item I would like to just bring to your attention is that the city it has received its 18th Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for our annual comprehensive financial report, which is prepared following the year end of our fiscal year. I want to just recognize Judy Belanger and her staff for the hard work that she puts into this, along with the staff. We are only less than 10 communities in the state that have this certificate of achievement for our comprehensive annual financial report. So I just want to thank her for that and her staff.
Congratulations on that, and thank you.
The next item that I'd like to just bring to the City Council's attention is that the City of Portsmouth has been notified that it is the Utility of the Year Award through the New England Waterworks Association, and we've been awarded that through our Portsmouth Water Division as the Utility of the Year. The award recognizes Portsmouth Water Division for its significant improvements to the water system infrastructure, customer service, staff training, and operations to further protect public health and customers it serves. A number of things that they have identified. But as you are aware, we serve over 8,000 customers in 7 communities. Over the last 10 years, through the support of the City Council, the City of Portsmouth's management and operations staff have been proactively upgrading the water system. The efforts have included master planning studies, piloting programs, capital planning, and resulted in significant capital and operation improvements to the system. And I have a list of items, but one that I think we're very proud of is we're probably the first water plant, the new water plant is the first in the Northeast and might even be the whole northern part of the United States to have a LEED certified water treatment plant. And a lot of thought and effort went into this. Peter Rice and Dave Allen and Steve Parkinson, all from the Public Works Department, that put a lot of work into this. I will, once we fully accept the plan, I think I'd like to see the council maybe take another trip up there and take a look at it, because it is going to be one that people are going to be modeling for many years. So I want to thank them for all their hard work and to be recognized by this national organization. Thank you.
Congratulations once again. Thank you for your hard work and your creativity.
Your Honor, that is all I have, other than in the written comments I did, as part of information, I did indicate to you that I would report back on the Atlantic Heights Emergency Access Project on what the cost of that would be. And the cost of the work outlined in the project scope is $13,200, which we'll fund through capital contingency. And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer those.
Questions on that one for John? Not?
On that one, no, sorry.
An additional question for John, Councilor Smith.
Yeah, I just wanted to, if you can go over a little bit of the rezoning of 1900 Lafayette Road.
Sure. What I'd like to do is have the deputy city manager come down. I apologize. I thought that was, it really is going to take a public, they're going to have an additional public hearing, but I'll have her speak to it.
I know your memo was good. It's very self-explanatory, but for the public.
Sure, absolutely.
So they understand what's about to happen out there.
Sure.
Sure. There's one parcel of several. The property owner requested a rezoning from OR to Gateway District is what it would likely go to. And the planning board considered that at their August meeting and really felt the public hearing was in order to make sure that all the other parcels there, of which there are a total of 7, I believe, would have the opportunity to comment, and that the surrounding area, neighbors across the street could all come out and express their opinions. So there's been a notice that's gone out, broadly distributed, and we expect to have a lot of people at the planning board meeting next month on that subject.
And is it, in the future Armed Service Reserve Center, is that a done deal?
I'll speak to that.
City manager?
Yes, it is, and as they've described to us, they really don't have to abide by any land use. They do not have to abide by any of our building regulations. If you would like, I could try to get them in here to make a presentation to the city council.
I'm not so concerned that as I realize that the property tax loss that we will have on that property, because it will become a government property.
And if the council would like, I can try to see if we can place them on as a presentation item at some point.
I would like a presentation.
that.
Sure, I will.
Okay.
I'm only going to make one caveat, that I'll try. I mean, I'll ask them. I'm not.
It's coming up to be an election year.
If not, then
but
just
you're
to
talking about
report
the
back
DOD.
on what is the actual tax loss we have?
Well, I can tell you that. I mean, it's probably about $140,000, you know. So what I will do is I'll contact DOD and ask them if they'll come in. DOD.
Been a lot of fire stations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. That concludes,
Cindy.
if it does, any questions or inquiries for the city manager, city staff? Okay, with that, I'll head on to the mayor's portion of the agenda. We have appointments for consideration, that of William Gladhill to be appointed as a regular member to the planning board. He currently serves as an alternate. That's for consideration. And John Christ, appointment to the board of library trustees. We have 2 for voting this evening. We'll try to take them both together unless someone wishes to sever them. The first is Chris Hubbard, appointment to the Pierce Island Committee, and the second is Dana Levinson, appointment to the Board of Trustees of the Trust Fund.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you very much, councilors. And we now move on to the Assistant Mayor's portion of the agenda and the City Manager's evaluation report.
Thank you. We had a committee appointed by the mayor that consisted of myself, Councilor Dwyer, Councilor Hitmatic, and Councilor Smith to evaluate our city manager, which we're required to do annually after the budget is passed. And we had several communications, and we came up with the results of the city manager evaluation. I'd like to read it, and I have a copy to give to each of our press people. This evening, the City Council concluded its annual evaluation of City Manager John Bohenko's job performance over the past year. It reviewed all aspects of his duties as City Manager, including but not limited to general administration, administrative management, program responsibilities, public policy responsibilities, relationships, personal skills and traits, and the final is goals. The City Council finds that the City Manager's overall performance continues to be outstanding to exceptional in all categories. So that's the result of our committee work this year, and we want to thank our City Manager for being so dedicated and wonderful to our city, and for helping us, guiding the City Council through all its endeavors. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Assistant Mayor, and thank you, committee members, and congratulations to you, John Bohenko.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We now move on to, we've done item D, where Councilor Dwyer has previously been heard. So we're now going to go forward with item E on there, Councilor Smith, and Traffic and Safety and Parking Committee action sheet.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to accept the Traffic and Safety Committee meeting that was held August 11th. If I can have a second, I'm happy to.
Councilor Smith.
Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions. There's nothing in here that requires an ordinance change.
Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
And one opposed. And the next is the Parking Committee action sheet minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to accept the Parking Committee meeting held August 11th. If I can have a second, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Second.
We have a motion seconded. Councilor Smith?
If anyone has any specific questions, actually, these 3 items were all taken care of on an earlier part of our agenda tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed.
That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your work on both committees. We now move on to item 11, miscellaneous and unfinished business. Council Lister.
If I could just ask a question, is there any change in the timeline for the Wentworth Alumni Field, when that might be ribbon cutting used?
I would just speak to that issue, if I might, Your Honor.
Please.
On Friday, I did meet with some representatives on the site from the Joint Building Committee staffing. We had Steve Bartlett there, we had myself, we had Dan Hartree, we had Steve Parkinson, Russ Wilson. We were there to observe the field, and what I'd like to do is reserve specific comment until we're able to talk to the JBC, but it will be delayed. We want to make sure that the field is done absolutely correctly. The thing I will say to the council tonight, there is protocol that the JBC has as it relates to these things because of the size of the project, and so we want to talk to the JBC and go through the proper protocol because this really is a JBC project. But I had some people mention concerns to me. We went out and observed, and we knew there were issues out there. We wanted to, though, document some things, and we are not going to accept the field until we're fully comfortable. It will be a field that we all can be very, very happy with when it is ultimately accepted. But our protocol does say that we should go to the JBC, and that's where we're headed with this. We have put on notice those people that we needed to put on notice with regards to this, and the JBC chairs have been advised of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Council Lister. Any further miscellaneous items or unfinished business?
Call for adjournment.
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you and very much, and good night.